WWL Louisiana News at 5 begins with breaking news.
A line of strong storms is sweeping through the area, and some spots have seen several inches of rain in a short amount of time, leading to some issues with flash flooding.
Yeah, you can see it there on your screen. People are sharing eyewitness photos and videos of street flooding and high water in their neighborhoods. We're seeing posts from the Baton Rouge area all the way into Mississippi.
Now, this is all happening as crews repair a critical water main break. The gusher started last night and left the east bank of Jefferson Parish without water pressure, leading to a boil water advisory for 250,000 customers. A lot to talk about this evening. Good evening and thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Cherise Gibson.
And I'm Katie Moore. We'll have breaking news updates on both the rain threat and that massive water outage in just a moment.
First tonight, New Orleans will allow parking on the neutral ground so people can move their cars to safety tonight. Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin has the latest on the rain threat, which is expected to return tomorrow.
Yes, but not kind of a different setup. And we'll talk more about tomorrow's setup coming up. But let's get to what is happening right now. So far, the heaviest totals that we have seen and very well forecasted by the models, if you were with us during our newscast yesterday afternoon and evening, setting up North Shore and River Parish, and that's exactly where we've seen the flash flooding. Now, the rain is still ongoing on the North Shore. However, it's not as intense as it was earlier. However, with the rainfall that we have seen so far on the North Shore, and estimates of even 3 to 6 inches of rainfall, started to overflow a lot of those creeks, streams, and some of the smaller rivers on the North Shore, and we now have a flash flood emergency that includes Covington to Madisonville down to Mandeville. So in this area highlighted, we have high water. At times that can be flowing, so you want to avoid any standing water that you're going to see in this particular area. Now, as I said, while it is still raining, it is not the intense rains that we saw earlier in the day. But with that rain that started earlier and continued and at times intense, the accumulation totals on the North Shore have been much higher than elsewhere. Now, some of the current high rainfall rate type storms are all focused now into Mississippi. The rains that we have across the North Shore, while heavy, not the types that would lead to quick flooding. That is, again, kind of moving on. But because of the accumulation totals that we have seen so far on the North Shore, that has just kind of exacerbated the problem. So any additional rain, even if it is light, does tend to lead to those issues. So again, the Covington, Madisonville to Mandeville area at the moment is under a flash flood emergency. We're starting to see those showers now pushing into the metro area, or continuing to push into the metro area. And what has been interesting, notice we still have ample moisture that is surging in from the south, but at least across metro New Orleans, and I'm including Jefferson as well, it has not been nearly as heavy. And in fact, we get plenty of breaks in the rainfall in the metro area. Now, you do get some brief downpours, and as we know, it doesn't take much to get some street flooding. So even though the intensity and the coverage in the city is not nearly as great as it was North Shore or in the river parishes, we still may see some street flooding in the coming hours. So thankfully, though, what we have already seen so far today has been letting up. We've started to see a lot of those showers weakening, and will continue to do so through the evening and into the night. So still some ongoing showers even past 7:30. After 8 o'clock, a lot of that rainfall starts to wind down, and after 10, we may be relatively dry. A few stray showers certainly, but a drier period going into the late night and overnight period. Then as we head toward tomorrow morning, another line of showers will be moving on through. Now, this won't have that training type rainfall. It should be a fairly fast moving line, but tomorrow's rain at times will be intense, and with the ground now completely saturated, could lead to additional flooding. We'll talk more about the rains ongoing now and looking ahead to the next several rounds of rainfall, which will continue into the weekend in just a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And if that wasn't enough, you can see conditions outside live tonight are foggy in some spots. This is one of our photographers who is on the road in Slidell. That heavy rain is continuing to come down in St. Tammany Parish. If possible, you should really stay off the roads there. You're going to want to be careful if you're heading pretty much anywhere tonight, though. Other roads seeing high water and fog, like Highway 190.
Yeah, drivers in Covington and Mandeville are taking it slowly as they try to make it through the flooding. Eleanor Timone has found one of the spots where traffic has been getting backed up tonight. She joins us now live from Covington, where it looks like there's a flash flood emergency, and you can see that flooding right behind you, Eleanor.
That is right, ladies. I am right here by US 90 between Covington and Mandeville. And like Chris mentioned, and you both mentioned, there is a flash flood warning. Now, I want to show you just how deep the water here is on Lewis Prima Drive. You can see Copeland's behind me, but it is above my ankles here, the water here. We saw a car just coming past like now. getting stuck in the water. We saw a man having to push his car out into the car park just across here, but as I mentioned, the car park here where Copeland's is behind me, that water has definitely risen since we've been here, since maybe 3:30, Katie and Cherise. We started to see the water out here recede, but it looks like and it appears that the water is beginning to rise again. It's starting to get heavier. You can see the cars coming past. These trucks are obviously higher. We've seen many low cars, many sedans taking it easy. You can see the water, how high it is. But before, when we were out here, Katie and Cherise, as I mentioned, the water receding, the water on the highway was immense. The water in the very far right lane was covered. People were all having to merge. That's why we were mentioning the traffic was so backed up, because that right lane was basically impassable. But now the water has receded, but it appears that the water is starting to get, stuck in this general vicinity. Like I mentioned, Lewis Prima Drive, the car park where Copeland's is, between the Covington and Mandeville area. The rain is continuing to pour down. It doesn't appear that it's stopping anytime soon. There was a little lull, as I mentioned, but again, it is continuing to rain out here. Flash flood warning in place. Now, the EOC did want to make mention that if you are having to travel this evening, please take it easy on the road. If the water is high, do not drive through it. You do not want to get stuck in that water. Please make sure that you have all your alerts set. Keep watching WWL Louisiana for all your updates. Make sure you have your alerts set on your phone so you get those emergency updates if there is flash flood warnings that are going to keep coming through. But again, Katie and Cherise, a flash flood warning here in the Covington-Mandeville area. Reporting live, Eleanor Tabone, WWL Louisiana.
All right, and Eleanor, Chris said, as you just mentioned in his forecast recently, that water keeps coming down and it's slowing down, right, Chris, if I'm not mistaken? It's just going to add on to what we're seeing right now.
We're going to add to those totals.
Okay, Eleanor, make sure you're careful out there as well. Now, there are more flooding hotspots in the river parishes tonight.
Yeah, one resident in Laplace is wondering if the drainage pumps there are even working. Amelia Strahan is joining us live now from St. John Parish with a closer look at that. Amelia?
That's right, Katie and Cherise. Well, the rain is still coming down out here, but if I were to walk out into this front yard behind me, that rain would be well above my knees. And we spoke to the homeowner in this house right behind me, and he said that his house was flooded after he got home from work at 1 p.m. Just take a look at this video. He got home at 1, but by the time 2 o'clock came around, he says his entire front yard was flooded. Unfortunately, this is nothing new for Josh and his neighbors. He said that on January 9th, he filed an insurance claim for the last time his house flooded. He says that the stormwater pumps behind his house aren't working, but whenever he called St. John Parish, they said that they are working. We also reached out to St. John Parish to ask about the status of the pumps in this neighborhood, but we haven't heard back from them yet. He said it's frustrating to have to send his wife and 17-month-old daughter up the street just to avoid floodwaters. And if something isn't done soon, he might not stay in St. John Parish for much longer.
It's devastating. So this will be the third time, counting Hurricane Ida, that our house is flooded. And, that nobody can answer questions of what can be done about it. You ask the parish to do something and they clean the ditches, which is more or less cutting the grass. So the water has nowhere to go.
We spoke with his neighbors as well, and they had a similar story that we're going to share with you at 6 o'clock. In St. John Parish, Amelia Strahan, WWL Louisiana.
That's got to be frustrating for the people in St. John the Baptist Parish. Amelia, thank you so much. We're going to keep our smartphone apps handy. We want you to do that as well. As the rains continue tonight and the rest of this week, you can also use the app to share pictures and any videos of severe weather like flooding with us. Of course, we want you to be careful when you do that. Just search your phone's app store. You can download a copy for free.
Nearly 250,000 Jefferson Parish residents lost water service because of a break in a single 20-inch pipe.
Yeah, tonight the problem has been patched, but water pressure is still not back to normal for the east bank of JP. The boil water advisory remains. However, Alyssa Curtis joining us now live. And Alyssa, when is the pressure expected to get back?
Katie, Sharice, we actually just got an update from Councilman Scott Walker. He says much of the East Bank, your pressure should be back on. It's not quite 100% yet, but a lot of it is back. So that is very good news for East Bank residents here in Jefferson Parish. But this process has been fairly tricky because this system is just old. It's an aging system. Jefferson Highway is no longer flooded, and most of the spewing has ended after a 20-inch pipe broke Tuesday afternoon.
When I left here last night, they were still drilling. There was water covering the street. So it was a big deal that the repair got made last night, and we're able to try to re-energize the system this morning.
Now they're working to repair the street. Plus, they're working to slowly restore full water pressure to residents, which Sydney Basley, the director of Jefferson Parish Water Department, says can be tricky.
We don't want to break more lines out in the field. If we slam the system with too much pressure, we're going to have broken mains everywhere. So our plan is to gradually turn one pump at a time.
In the meantime, some of the 250,000 people affected went out to buy water.
We can't take a bath. She wants to wash her hair, but I can't do that. It's just been miserable.
Jefferson Parish President Cynthia Lee Shang says so many people were affected because of where the break happened.
Literally out the door of the treatment plant, so at the very start of our distribution system, and that's why it has affected everybody on the East Bank. It was the worst location for it to break.
But why did it happen? Officials say because it's an old system. They say the pipe that broke was laid 80 years ago. Recent weather conditions don't help.
I think the additional extreme weather we've had and the soil conditions, the drought and the freezing weather probably exacerbated that situation, but generally the pipe just was out of its useful life.
The parish recently implemented a rate increase, in part to replace this aging infrastructure, but it'll take 20 years to fully complete.
We knew this was going to happen. We were proactive about it, but we can't get to it fast enough. Sydney says there's 70 projects throughout the parish being designed now. In what we believe is the worst areas.
So we actually ran into Councilmember Scott Walker here, so we asked him to join us. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. We've been talking about this aging system. Tell me a little bit about the plan and how you guys are really targeting the worst of the worst.
Yeah, we're an old parish with old infrastructure, and the can's been kicked down the road for a long time and it's starting to catch up with us. So over the next 20 years, $2.2 billion of infrastructure improvements, replacing the entire water and sewer system in Jefferson Parish. Long overdue. It can't happen overnight, though, and we do have to deal with things like this occasionally. Unfortunately, this was a big pipe and a bad spot that caused a lot of problems, but over time, this is going to get a lot better in Jefferson Parish.
How do you guys know where exactly those pipes are? We know there are 70 projects right now happening that started. How did those 70 get targeted?
The worst of the worst. I mean, they're all old. Some are in worse shape than others. And as they break, instead of putting Band-Aids on them as we have in the past, we can actually replace and upgrade for the future and be able to monitor better going forward which pipes need attention, where leaks are coming from, how much is leaking. It'll be a much better system going forward.
All right, and one last question. You mentioned right before we started that a lot of the pressure is back up.
Almost to 100% across the parish. Not everybody's there yet, but should be there soon. And the boil water advisory does remain in effect. So just because it looks like it's normal again, boil water for at least another 24 hours. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. A very good update. A lot of great progress there. Like he said, we are still under a boil water advisory here in East Bank of Jefferson Parish. Of course, we'll let you know when that is lifted. Reporting live in Jefferson Parish, Alyssa Curtis, WWL Louisiana.
Alyssa, I don't know if Scott Walker's still right there, but have they sent those samples away for testing yet? Are we within that 24-hour period to be able to have this boil water advisory lifted? Has pressure been restored enough at this point?
Yeah. Yes, we were told those samples were taken this afternoon, and that process of getting those samples were taken. They have to sit for 24 hours before they can be analyzed, and then once they're analyzed, they will determine whether or not it is safe to lift that boil water advisory. But yes, those samples have been taken.
All right, so you could reason that we're in this advisory until at least tomorrow afternoon. So that's really good new information. Thank you so much, Alyssa.
Along with schools closing today on the East Bank of Jefferson Parish, so did businesses. Now, the ones that stayed open struggled without water. They brought in bottled water and also boiled water and filled up buckets with the trickle that came out of the faucets that they experienced earlier. Some businesses on Metairie Road said the broken water main is breaking their bottom line.
It's empty. I mean, we just have the Uber and all the DoorDash, but they take 30% already, so it's not like we're making anything. We just kind of want to stay open and just, I know the entire Metairie is out.
So on Wednesday for lunch, the ladies in the neighborhood would be coming by, but with the kids out with no school, I don't know how much of that we'll have.
My husband he say, maybe we close today, but I want open. And I said, okay, we can fill the water if the customer come in.
Water samples are being tested. We just talked about this a couple of seconds ago, but a boil water advisory does remain in place for the entire East Bank of JP.
The water issues led to major complaints at Armstrong International Airport this morning. With no water pressure, the airport closed all restrooms and water fountains and some of the restaurants as well. And Lily Cummings shows us what thousands of passengers faced throughout the day.
Nothing says welcome like no water at the airport.
We were a little surprised. I have never had a scenario where I showed up at the airport and there was no water, and I travel a lot, so this is a whole new one to put on the list of travel experiences. Hopefully not one that I repeat again.
Most passengers were shocked when they arrived.
Mild terror, to say the least. I'm 7 months pregnant, and I go to the bathroom about every 30 minutes. Mabry probably goes to the bathroom every, I don't know, hour or two.
Are we gonna hold it?
Yeah. These signs and airport staff were warning folks that restrooms and water fountains were closed.
Our Uber driver told us he woke up to no water, and we didn't get any message on email or on the app for our flights that this was going on here.
The airport's restroom solution added a little bit more travel to folks' itineraries.
After arriving and checking bags, travelers were forced to go
down 2 flights of escalators,
then
out the door on the first floor, where if you needed to use the bathroom, they set up porta potties for travelers.
There were no options after security. The busted water main that knocked out water to the East Bank of Jefferson Parish also caused some travelers to go home early.
We had a wonderful time till yesterday. We got back to our hotel and there was no water at all.
Armstrong International said flights were not impacted. Lily Cummings, WWL Louisiana.
Not fun. Well, the airport says some restaurants were able to open using bottled water. Most served only pre-packed foods and drinks. The boil water advisory again remains in place for the entire East Bank of Jefferson Parish. We'll pass word on as soon as we confirm that order has been lifted.
All right, taking a look at the wider look at radar just to show you what has been moving through and what is still to come. Now, thankfully, the more intense rains that we saw earlier in the day that led to a lot of the flooding in the river parishes and on the North Shore have started to wind down. The heaviest of the rainfall. The rain, though, continues, and at times light to moderate rain can only exacerbate those issues that are currently happening. And unless we get more breaks, it'll still be an issue through the next couple of hours. And I'm talking more about the North Shore, where we're still watching storms that are offshore. And again, while not incredibly intense, in areas that are already saturated with 3+ almost 6 inches of rainfall, it can continue the problem. And that's what we're watching and we'll continue to watch offshore. A lot of these storms will move over the river parishes and then continue over those areas on the North Shore where we do have that flash flood emergency. Now, on the whole, the North Shore has already seen a substantial amount of rainfall, estimates of over 3+ inches. So most locations have already gotten saturated with the rainfall. It's in certain areas such as Covington to Abita, Madisonville, and Mandeville that have seen even more than that and will continue to see these rains probably for the next couple of hours. So that is where our flash flood emergency is. Do not try and pass in standing water. Saw a truck flying past Eleanor with high water and you just don't know how deep some of it is. And in times on the North Shore, especially with a lot of those creeks and streams, sometimes that can be moving water. Now, as far as the metro area goes, showers. We're getting scattered showers, have seen some decent accumulation totals, but nothing like we've had to our north and west. And also notice the rainfall in the metro area, a lot of breaks. Models have actually done a very good job with this system, kind of stalling it just to the west of the city, and most of the issues occurring river parishes, some down the bayou and on the North Shore. And that's exactly what the models were saying even as of early yesterday, and continue to indicate that. This will likely start winding down in the next few hours. After 7 o'clock, we should start to see far more breaks in the rainfall after 8, 9 o'clock. Not all of the rainfall, but most of it done, and certainly the heavier the rain. We will see a drier period overnight and to get the day started tomorrow. Then we're expecting more of a line of storms to roll on through, maybe late morning and midday. Now this one will not last all day, maybe kind of a solid line where everybody sees the rainfall, and we won't see the training type rainfall with this event, but within some of the isolated downpours within that line, which could be kind of efficient rainmakers and ground already saturated, flooding will still be an issue for tomorrow. Here's a look at some of the official totals from observing stations. Obviously, between some of these stations, we've had far higher totals. Estimates of 3 to 6 inches of rainfall on the North Shore, at least at our observing stations, almost 2 inches of rainfall at Hammond, over 2.3 inches of Bogalusa. You see kind of the numbers changing here, to over 2 inches, an inch and 3/4 at Slidell. Not a whole lot of rain occurring at Kenner, but yet they were enough to pick up 2 inches of rainfall there. Here in the city, the showers have been more scattered in nature and far lighter. High humidity, it has been warm, and as a lot of folks described this morning, kind of sweaty. Ground and most of our surfaces are still very cold after our freezes just a few days ago. And now when you introduce this warm, humid air from the Gulf of Mexico, everything condenses. All of that air condenses immediately, which is why we've had kind of that sweaty feel to the air. And then now with the rainfall moving in, kind of a wetter couple of days. What is triggering all of this are these upper troughs that are well off to our west. We're going to see one of these that is kind of triggering our rainfall now start lifting away. So we'll have more of those showers tomorrow and then a break as we head into early on Friday. Although more showers on Friday, not nearly as extensive nor as heavy. We'll get a final round of rain early Saturday with this upper trough finally starting to move, and then we will be clearing out for Saturday night, going into Sunday, and a much drier stretch of weather heading into next week. I know the flooding is not something that we want to contend with, especially if it starts moving into homes and businesses, but this is certainly helping out our drought. Again, we started ended the year 2023 very dry, and I feel like nature is trying to catch up in just the first few weeks of 2024. More rain will continue during the overnight, but most of our model guidance is indicating more breaks. This is a different model, and again, a drier night going into early tomorrow morning. Next round of rainfall moves in late morning, midday, and more of a line of storms that will again be moving, but with the ground already saturated, could easily see some standing water. Rainfall totals that will add to the totals that we currently have. In some instances, another inch or 2 inches of rainfall, not playing too much in the southeast Louisiana as we get into even early Friday morning. The bulk of the heavier rainfall with that next round that comes in on Thursday may be a little bit more off to our west, but the models have been struggling with rainfall totals, and so we'll have to wait and see how that line really does set up. We'll add to those totals from another round of rainfall into Friday, and then by Saturday, again, probably morning, midday, we'll have kind of the final round of rainfall before everyone starts clearing out. We'll keep that higher risk of street flooding around through the rest of this evening and tonight, but then again, after about 8, 9 o'clock, a lot of that rainfall will be winding down. Not as high of a threat for street flooding tomorrow, mainly because we're not going to see the training of rainfall, but certainly with very saturated ground, the line of storms that we are expecting to move on through could be heavy at times, but not the street flooding type concerns, or not as widespread of a street flooding concern as we saw today. Friday will also bring in some rounds of heavy rainfall, and again, with the ground now saturated, that risk is on the higher side. Not going to be a threat on Saturday. Risk of severe weather. Didn't really see anything, thankfully. Occasionally some gusty winds, low end threat through the rest of this evening and tonight, and we'll see another low end threat for severe storms tomorrow. At the moment, nothing expected to be severe for the Friday rain or the Saturday morning rains either. So the severe threat is kind of secondary to the flooding threat. Most of our rainfall in the next few hours showers will be winding down. Still some patchy showers or isolated showers, but patchy fog will then be the concern if you're out on the roadways and saturated ground. And because of the rainfall that we've already seen, it may take some time, maybe going into the later night hours, to see all of that water recede. And that's been another issue. Now we're getting into the evening hours, and then with the additional rainfall that we've already seen on some of those roadways, may be difficult to traverse a lot of the North Shore roads. Temperatures into the 60s. Tomorrow, again, a line of storms at times, some heavy and a few downpours are possible, around 73 degrees. We'll have that second, third round of rainfall Friday, another one Saturday morning, midday, but it does look like for our parade Saturday night, no issue. Still kind of a question mark on our Friday evening parades. Then temperatures coming down, and we'll stay cool and dry, but no freezes heading into Sunday and next week.
All right, thank you, Chris. Today, a key witness, one of the victims actually, took the stand in the retrial of Cardell Hayes. He's the man accused in the shooting death of Saint star Will Smith.
Smith's widow Raquel testified about the final hours with the love of her life and being shot and injured the night her husband was killed. Paul Murphy is following this case for us in the courtroom, joining us now with an update. Paul.
Sharice, Katie, Raquel Smith's testimony was both raw and emotional. She took the jury through what was happening before, during, and after shots were fired. Raquel Smith said Cardell Hayes shot her and her husband as they were walking away in April 2016. She took the stand on day 3 of the trial of the man accused of killing her husband, Saints star Will Smith, and leaving her seriously injured. Prosecutors allege Hayes shot Will Smith in the back and his wife in the legs after rear-ending his SUV in the Lower Garden District. Raquel Smith testified the shooting left her with physical and emotional scars. I didn't want to move. I was defeated mentally, physically. My husband was gone. My kids were crying every day. Raquel Smith also talked about the last day with her husband. She said her and Will had a good time at the French Quarter Festival, listening to Zydeco music and enjoying the city and the moment. She teared up as she told the jury, "He gave me my last kiss and said, 'I love you, my country girl.' He was very happy." Raquel Smith testified that neither her husband nor a second man in their party had guns in their hands before the shooting. She also said she went to where Will and Hayes were arguing like high school kids after the crash and tried to calm the confrontation. "I told my husband, we have 3 kids. This isn't worth it. We locked eyes and he said, 'I got it.' We walked away. It was done. It was over. We absolutely turned our backs and we walked away." And that's when she says shots rang out and both her and her husband were hit. Defense attorneys have claimed Hayes was not the aggressor, but fired in self-defense, fearing the angry NFL star was fetching a gun from his SUV. Smith told defense attorney Sarah Shavinsky during a tough cross-examination, "It was not necessary for this man to murder my husband and shoot me. My husband died because of Hayes' anger." And Raquel Smith concluded her testimony. Then Will Smith's former teammate Pierre Thomas took the stand. He's still on the stand at this hour. We're live outside Orleans Parish Criminal Court. Paul Murphy, WWL Louisiana.
All right, thank you so much for that, Paul. We have a breaking news update on the stormy conditions that are happening all over the metro area right now. We want to get back out to one of the trouble spots, Highway 190 through Covington and Mandeville, seeing some pretty high water tonight.
Eleanor Tabone, she's been out there for us live, joining us with an update. Eleanor, has that water receded or is it still kind of rising?
Katie and Sharice, it's just incredible. We touched base with you earlier in the show and we showed you how much water was out here. You can see just miraculously in the last 20-25 minutes how much water has in fact receded. When we came out here, you couldn't see any of this grass out here. I couldn't see the road. But now you can clearly see it. We're seeing cars travel past through here much more easily than it was 30 minutes ago. We're also seeing the highway now clear of water. Now it's just this water in this section of Lewis Prima Drive opposite Copeland's just sitting here. It's slowly receding. But as I mentioned earlier, this entire area was filled with water. We saw one car get stuck. We also spoke to a driver who said he's just trying to get home and he's never seen this much water in this Covington, Mandeville area. Take a listen.
Just a lot of rain and a lot of heavy traffic that we don't normally have too often over here, and the flooding in this area I've never seen before.
What's your concern?
Just hoping I can make it back to my subdivision and get home safely tonight.
When was the last time you saw heavy rain like this out this way?
Not in the past couple of years, at least. I've been over here for almost 3 years now, and I haven't seen it before.
Katie and Sharice, I am by US 90 between Covington and Mandeville, and as I mentioned earlier in the evening, there was so much water out here on the roadway, but it is beginning to recede. As I mentioned, this grass was not even visible when we were out here, and we couldn't even see the ground here before, but the water is receding. The rain has definitely eased up compared to what it was when we touched base with you earlier. But again, if you are traveling home tonight during these conditions, please drive slowly. Please continue to monitor the roadways. Have your alerts set up on your phone. You can continue to watch WWL Louisiana on the app. Make sure you have the app so you can get those alerts. But reporting live, Eleanor Tabone, WWL Louisiana.
All right, Eleanor, thank you. And of course, she is at one spot in this area that has been declared a flash flood emergency. We do want to go out live to another picture on the North Shore to give us a little more perspective on it. Our photographer has left I-10 and is headed through Mandeville. So this is a live driving shot, a look at the current conditions. Looks like the rain has let up quite a bit.
Yeah, Chris, you were talking about this earlier. You said that only certain spots were really experiencing some flooding, but you said, well, how long is this flash flood emergency going to last?
Well, it's until 6:45, and I don't see any reason why the Weather Service would expire that early, just because of the high waters that we have seen. And while it is receding, as Eleanor said, we may still have a few more downpours that could possibly prolong the event. So not that I think we'll see conditions worsen, but it could keep things on the more dangerous side for the next couple of hours. And one of the things that the Weather Service kind of put into their chat is their reasoning why they issued that advisory. We're starting to see are going to kind of the nighttime hours. There's not a whole lot of streetlights on parts of the North Shore, and now you're reaching the evening commute. So you got a lot more cars onto dark roads and the high water. That's kind of the reasoning for the kind of the reason for the flash flood emergency there. I don't see conditions worsening. As a matter of fact, we're starting to see some breaks in that area right now.
All right, Chris, thank you. That's our news at 5. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you back here in a half hour at 6 with the very latest. CBS Evening News is next.